Hi, my name is Cara Jones.
I'm Christina Moneyhan.
And I'm Asato Kitamura. In today's video, we will be analyzing the role of global organizational leaders and how their positions and the departments they lead impact their companies. The two leaders we will be focusing on today are Doris Golkin-Smith and Tiffany English.
This is Dory Golkin-Smith. She is the co-founder of the women's clothing company Of Mercer. Of Mercer offers chic and appropriate workwear outfits for women in business. Everything is designed and produced in New York City. Of Mercer was founded in 2013 and was recently acquired earlier this year. Currently, Dory is a program officer at Goldman Sachs for an organization called 10,000 Small Businesses. She runs a program where entrepreneurs can essentially get their MBA. She also just launched a new program at Goldman called Black in Business, and this program supports African American women sole proprietors. Dory was my first boss in the fashion industry, and she has really encouraged and supported me throughout the years. In our interview with Dory, we discussed finding job and leadership opportunities that are mission-oriented. She suggested that we find a topic that we care about and then find a company that is committed to that mission. That way the passion is there. Dory explained to us that she would define her leadership style as being personable. She is very open with her employees and encourages informal conversations to open up the dialogue. For example, Dory admits to her coworkers that she avidly watches The Bachelor. She works very hard to be a leader that is approachable. She believes that leaders should be transparent when appropriate, and open communication is super important to her. And she thinks leaders should be willing to listen to their employees and learn from them. Dory also says that it is really important for leaders to be well versed in every area of their company, like the finance side, the fashion side, the tech world, etc. It will help the company run more smoothly if the leader knows what is currently happening in the market that they are involved in.
So, what are some characteristics that you think make up a strong and successful leader?
My leadership style is to be like really approachable. Like I really like to get to know people on a personal level. I like to share personal things. I like to like bring people into my life. And I think that that human connection of like, hey, like who's your favorite, who's your celebrity crush, or like um and I feel like Christina's is Justin Bieber, maybe.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
That's right.
Like really, and like admitting that I watched The Bachelor, things like that, I think really humanizes the person, and it makes it, opens up the dialogue. So I think backing into kind of what I think makes a strong leader is like transparency when appropriate, like not unlimited transparency, but transparency when appropriate, and approachability. Because I think a lot of leadership failures come when they don't know what's happening. Like you hear these CEOs be like, I didn't know. Well, you should have. And like, it's your fault that you weren't in the know because you hadn't opened those communication channels, or you hadn't made it easy for your people to talk to you. So I think that kind of communication and transparency is really important. I also think that being open, if these two is kind of like nuanced, but you need to be open to feedback, but you also need to be really decisive. Like I think leaders make a lot of decisions in any day, and it's important that you can make those decisions, but not also be too stubborn and kind of like what you think is the answer before you get input from your team and other people in your orbit. I also think something, I don't know if this will come up later, but one of the things that I think is really important to a leader is to be kind of well versed in like everything touching their business. So like, running a fashion company, I had to be connected to the tech world because we were starting in the e-commerce world and there are all sorts of new innovations happening. I had to be tied to the entrepreneurship world. I had to be tied to the fashion world and understand what was happening like in trends and like traditional fashion. And I think similarly in my role at Goldman, it's important that I stay like in touch with the entrepreneurial community and like what's happening on the ground in our market. So like what's going on in New Orleans, like what are we seeing in Houston? But then also what is happening in the financial institutions, the ones that are funding all this amazing work we're doing. So like really kind of staying up to date and in touch with what's happening. And I think that makes for better partnership and better kind of optimization of work to know kind of the full scale of the ecosystem that you're operating in.
And what do you see as some of your leadership liabilities and weaknesses?
I mean, probably the openness and transparency. Um, I think that's not a liability if we have great people who I trust, and I have always worked with people I trust. But I think, sharing vulnerabilities in my mind is mostly a positive, right? Like, here's what I'm concerned about. Here's what I'm thinking about. Here's what's a risk for the business. But obviously that has, it's a double-edged sword of, using it against you, or not
Mhm.
trusting leadership, or feeling, insecure with where the organization is going. The personal life of employees is so, you want to give people work-life balance, right? So it's easier to like
Mhm.
help them have that balance if you know a bit more about what's happening. So like, if I share that I had a leak yesterday in my apartment, my manager might be
Mhm.
more likely to be like, work from home, and not have me be the one to ask that.
Yeah.
But I think what I've seen happen over the years is like, what counts as like needing balance. And I hear this a lot actually with like, I have two children, and I feel like there's a lot of support for mothers in the world right now. Like, do what you need to, like, leave at 5:30 if you need to do pickup, whatever it is. And so like, for that, it's quite easy. And I actually have heard the flip on
Mhm.
the other side with younger or unmarried people who are like, I need time to date. Like, I want to get married at some point. I want to have kids at some point. I can't do that if I'm in the office all the time. And that's an
Mhm.
interesting piece of feedback, which is like, how do you make space for that? And like, should you be open about it? Should you be vulnerable about it? Or should it just be embedded in the culture to have flexibility, whatever that it means, whether it's for my kids, um, or for a workout class, or for going on a Tinder date.
What techniques have you used to get the support of your superiors for implementing your vision of change? And how do you bounce back from being told no?
Good question. I think it's always best. I'm probably going to misquote this idea, but I'm going to say it anyways. One of my professors at Wharton was Adam Grant, and he talks about this thing called like the ladder inference. I don't think it was him that wrote it actually, but he taught it to me, so I'm going to say his name. Where like, you climb up a ladder making a decision. Like, okay, I'm going to start with like, let's talk about of Mercer for a second. Like, we want to um, make a lot of money. Okay, we all agree on that. We want to do so by selling women's apparel. We think the best market is selling workwear because it's an underserved market of women who have high disposable income. Then we're going to sell easy to pair outfits, and we are going to focus initially on matching suiting, right? So like, that all makes sense. I like walked you through the process of that. If I were to then go to, let's say, an investor and say like, hey, invest in me, we're making matching suiting. Like, why? That sounds terrible. That's boring. Like, why would we do that? Right? They have no connection to like how you got there. Understanding where a decision gets made and how it gets made makes it easier to either affect change or understand the change that has been made.
Our second interview was with Ms. Taffany English. She is the director for the Civil Rights Memorial Center, a project for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Throughout her career, she has been a leader in many roles, including the executive director of Central Alabama Fair Housing, a consultant for the Alabama Department of Mental Health, as well as being the founder and executive director of her own nonprofit, Eve's Circle. She has over 20 years of experience advocating for social justice and is currently a doctoral candidate at Troy University, earning her PhD in management with a focus on leadership and change. In the interview, we discussed her role at the Southern Poverty Law Center, her leadership style and how it has evolved over the course of her career, encouraging creative thinking and innovation amongst her staff, the meaning of work-life balance, as well as personal development. So, what kind of leader would you describe yourself to be?
I think when I answer this question, most people tend to want a leadership style. And if I were to have to put myself in a category, I would say that I actually have a more more of a coaching, mentorship, leadership style. And what I've learned over the course of my career is that what I consider to be good leaders, effective leaders, is that you also have to be very flexible in your leadership style and your approaches. One, because so many things change over time. The workplace changes over time, and those that you are assigned or called to lead will have very varying styles that you'll just have to use an individual approach, for those that you lead. So I would definitely say that it's more of a coaching, mentorship, leadership style, as opposed to anything like democratic or autocratic. And, sometimes that has to come out, but just what embodies me and my core values and beliefs, it would be that.
How do you encourage creative thinking and innovation within your organization?
By sharing the responsibilities and not being the one who's always making the decisions. I'll use, for example, we just redid our film for the Civil Rights Memorial Center. And one of the things that I really wanted to have is our staff at the table from the beginning to the end, so that they could help make decisions about what we should put in the film, how the film progresses, what we wanted to see. And all of that is based on their experience with our visitors. So when we were working with the multimedia company, I allowed my staff to have meetings with them where I wasn't present. Right. And I think that sparks creativity and innovation, and keeping them involved from beginning to end on several projects and things that will happen with the Civil Rights Memorial Center. And those are things that directly impact them, right? And I think giving them the ability to work from the beginning to the end, they're able to have more in-depth conversations with our visitors, because, it is a very good film, and I hope that one day you all can come visit and see it. But it sparks a lot of conversation, deep conversations with our visitors. And so it's important that the staff be able to also have those conversations as well.
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing leaders today?
Oh, I think the biggest challenge is the change in the way in which people work. I think for some, it's very challenging. Like, I don't mind telling you all my age. Carl probably told y'all anyway, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm 47, right? So my work ethic is very different than my friends who are in their late 50s or 60s. But I also have a 22-year-old whose work ethic is, I get to choose the environment, the climate, and I get to say what I want, like the conditions I want work in. For me, on the inside, I'm like, oh my God. But up here, I know she's right, especially when we center mental wellness in the workplace. And I do know that we can be flexible, and there are changes that can be made so that people can be more productive and taking care of themselves as well. Because I think we should not require people to work 80 hours just because that's the way it's always been done.
How do you feel traits like empathy and vulnerability play a role in your leadership?
So for me, empathy and vulnerability pretty much leads. And that's just because of who I am. And I firmly believe that in order for my staff or other people around me, even if they're not in the department with me, that they model what they see. And so if I don't lead in that way, then I also feel like it's sending a signal to them that they can't be that way in the workplace. And I think we need more empathy and more vulnerability in the workplace.
Okay. What are you doing to ensure personal development, growth as a leader?
So for us, our organization as a whole has paid for every single staff member to access LinkedIn Learning. And every single staff member at Southern Poverty Law Center has an opportunity to go through the management center, even if they're not managers. And so they go through training there. And if they find professional development, they send it to HR or send it to their supervisor. And if it's approved, then it's paid for by the organization. And so we support professional development in an array of ways.
What advice would you give someone starting out in a leadership role?
I would definitely encourage them to obtain a coach or a mentor outside of professional development, because there is nothing like someone who has walked in those shoes who can provide coaching and mentorship along the way. I think that is really important.
The question is, what are you doing to ensure personal development and growth as a leader? And her organization has paid every single staff member to access LinkedIn Learning. And they has a properly law to have an opportunity to go to management center even if they're not manager. And so they go through training there. If they find professional development, they send it to HR or supervisor, and it proof is paid for by the organization. So she supports professional development. The next question is, what advice would you give someone out in a leadership role? And she will encourage them to obtain a coach or mentor outside of professional development, since there's nothing like someone who has walked in their shoes who can provide coaching or mentorship along the way, and that's very important.
Do the leaders demonstrate effective global communication throughout the organization? After analyzing each interview, both Dory and Taffany demonstrate effective global communication. Dory explained that she wants her employees to know that she cares and they can come to her for help. Ms. Taffany stated that empathy and vulnerability play a big role in her job, and it is important for her employees to see that vulnerability in order for her and her staff to help each other. Dory and Taffany expressed that leading a successful team means that all members must be able to express themselves in order to effectively work together, them included. What is the comparison of the leadership styles, characteristics, and methods of operating their business? So both leaders we interviewed led with transparency. Dory, for example, is very approachable amongst her employees. To a certain extent, she welcomes her employees into her life. Making sure everyone has an understanding of what's going on in each other's lives allows the workplace to adapt to flexibility when needed. Ms. Taffany also uses transparency in her leadership style. Moreover, she described her style of leadership as coaching and mentoring. She wants to make sure that her employees not only do their job, but also expand their current skills, specifically with her part-time workers and volunteers. Taffany understands that this might not be their dream job, but wants to make sure they get all they can out of this experience, while adding a new skill to their resume. She also expressed how important it is to allow employees to make decisions, specifically decisions that directly affect them. Having the staff included in all parts of a project sparks new ideas and allows them to better understand what is going on. This creates creative thinking and innovation within her organization.
The next question is, did our interviewees demonstrate cross-cultural leadership awareness? Yes, they definitely did. Dory said that she really makes an effort to understand her employees at more than just a surface level. She is genuinely interested in connecting with them and building up that level of trust. She helps her employees and coworkers feel connected and safe, and in turn that builds up loyalty. She recognizes that all of her staff are in different stages of life, like those who are dating or who are parents or dealing with apartment renovations or really anything else, and she works with them to accommodate their schedules. Whatever they need to prioritize in their life, Dory offers solutions to meet their needs. She is understanding and respectful of her employees' personal lives. Ms. Taffany leads from the standpoint of what works for her employees. She recognizes how her employees thrive, and she changes her leadership styles to fit what they need. She says that she is aware that her employees model what they see, meaning that if she doesn't lead with empathy, that it can send a signal to her staff that they themselves cannot be empathetic or vulnerable in the office. By leading with empathy, Ms. Taffany is able to institute growth in her employees. She also has weekly check-ins that her employees initiate. Each staff member creates their own agenda for their meetings, and she finds that it helps her employees own the work that they are doing. And also, it helps them work on their own leadership skills. Both of our leaders that we interviewed believe in leading by example. If they want to promote an office culture of awareness, self-love, and loyalty, they start by showing those characteristics to their employees. They are both open about prioritizing self-care, like leaving the office early to go to a workout class or going back to school for a PhD. Both women effectively demonstrate cross-cultural leadership by leading with empathy, compassion, and vulnerability, and they both promote the vision of the company and its culture. The next question is, would we describe our interviewees as contemporary and innovative? And I would definitely say yes. They don't settle with where their businesses and careers stand. They both constantly strive for growth personally and professionally. Ms. Taffany sets aside time specifically for personal development. She seeks out trainings and workshops, and she even spends time with a coach or a mentor. She devotes time specifically towards learning and growing as a leader. That way she can be constantly challenging herself. Ms. Taffany is an innovative leader because she isn't the only one making decisions at the office. She includes her staff from start to finish on major projects, and she gives them a chance to really get involved in the business and take charge. This type of leadership innovation really helps to provide opportunities for her staff. When we asked Dory about how she kept her company afloat during the pandemic, she admitted that it was very, very difficult for her. They were a businesswear company trying to sell work clothes to women who weren't going into the office. Her solution was to make everyone feel as productive as possible. The communications team kept sending out emails to customers and posting on their social media and working on future campaigns and projects, while the design team continued to develop a collection that would eventually be produced. Dory gave each department long-term projects to continue to work on. This leadership innovation kept the company in business throughout the pandemic and gave all of Dory's employees opportunities of growth and development.
Hello, everyone. I am Michael Scott.
Hello, I'm Brandon Hidalgo, CEO of the Teaching Company.
And I'd like to start today by inspiring you. May I borrow someone's textbook, please? Thank you. What have we here? Ooh, economics. Very, very interesting. You cannot learn from books. Replace these pages with life lessons, and then you will have a book that is worth its weight in gold. I know these are expensive, but the lesson is priceless. Good. All right. I think you're inspired.
Michael Scott probably should not have ripped the pages out of a perfectly good book. But, as a group, we can agree that conducting these interviews and learning throughout this class was priceless. I learned that leading is a group effort. Being the leader means you might be in charge, but it doesn't mean you can do it alone. It truly takes every member of the team for an organization's success, and being a great leader means that you understand this important aspect. This means making yourself approachable and using empathy and vulnerability to connect with your team. This can include creating off-site bonding activities like volunteer work or grabbing dinner as a group. Including fun bonding time outside of work allows people to work better together. Furthermore, allowing members of your team to help make important decisions is a great way a leader can keep the team on track with the mission and vision of the organization. It boosts morale in the workplace while giving your team insight on the why behind certain decisions. This allows everyone to hold each other accountable. I also learned the importance of self-care and how having that work-life balance is vital for happiness. Moreover, expressing that to your team by showing that you value self-care makes them more comfortable to practice self-care as well. Overall, this helps maintain a healthy work environment for all parties. Lastly, I learned that being a successful and impactful leader means you are constantly evolving. You have to be open and flexible to change. Whether your organization is going through a pivot or there are new members on your team, as a leader, you have to be able to adapt to those changes.
I learned from this project to be constantly looking for ways to learn more and develop more in my career field, and how to be a leader and how to be a successful employee. I learned that that can come in many different ways, like having a mentor or looking for career development opportunities on LinkedIn or through other platforms. I can never know it all, and there's always an opportunity to learn more and grow more. I also learned from these interviews that self-care is really important in leadership as well as creating a work-life balance. You can't be a good leader without taking care of yourself, and you can't be a good employee if you aren't taking care of yourself. Finding a way to feel balanced in your life provides you with the means to be more successful at work. That balance can be anything from getting fresh air or eating better or even getting your nails done. I also heard firsthand from our interviewees the importance of open communication between a leader and their staff. That open communication will hopefully build trust and loyalty and in turn create a successful work dynamic. I learned that it is a good idea to start implementing weekly or monthly check-ins with your boss to ensure communication and check your progress. Opportunities like this are great for seeing how you can become more successful, but it also creates a space for you to share your feedback with your boss and maybe even hold them accountable on certain things. Overall, I think there were a lot of great takeaways from our interviews.
I learned a lot through this project, but what is particularly noteworthy is the importance of mentors and coaches that is having an objective perspective. I felt that I could grasp the situation correctly by always confirming my purpose, the actions that I took for the purpose, and objectively analyzing the results. I also learned that equal learning opportunities that are not tied to job title will not only improve the abilities of individual team members, but also maintain their motivation as well.